hilo jambo. Katika Laikipia hapa Laikipia pia Mheshimiwa Kenywa kila wakati amewasilisha maombi mengi kuhusu ng'ombe zao vile zinachukuliwa. Na hata kwa Mheshimiwa Kenywa, Seneta Kenywa, sijui kama hata wewe umepata nafasi ya kufurahia yale matokeo umekuwa ukijaribu kufanya. Kwa hivyo sisi tukiwa eneo la Meru na ambao nawakilisha hapa Seneti, nitaungana na viongozi wengine wa sehemu hiyo, wajumbe, viongozi wa County Assembly ya Meru, ndio tuweze kufikiria na tuone vile tunaweza fanya na tuweze kulinda watu wetu na mifugo wetu. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, mambo mengi haya tunaona ni ile kwa Kiingereza kwa kimombo wanaita historical injustices. Hiyo ndio sababu watoto wamesema wao, sisi tukiwa baba zao wazazi wao, tumeferi katika mambo mengi. Wamesema wazazi wao sababu ni hao hiyo age group. Sisi tukiwa viongozi tumewaambia tutafanya mambo mengi na hatufanyi. Kwa hivyo wamesema na wao sababu wamesoma na ni kikundi ambacho kimesoma sana Bwana Speaker. Ile mitambo ya computer intelligence, ile mitambo ya computer na maendeleo mengi ya IT Bwana Speaker, wale watoto wako juu sana. Na mawasiliano yao ni very instant. Wakitaka kuamua saa hii waongee wakiwa milioni 1, wataweza kuingia kwa mitandao na waweze kuwasilisha ujumbe wao. Kwa hivyo hata mahali tunaenda, uchaguzi tunazofanya siku za kesho, rais Bwana Speaker, hawa vijana watakuwa na malizia uchaguzi kwa mitandao. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri, ni shauri wenzangu hapa waweze kukaa vizuri na vijana, sababu akiamua seneta wa Kakamega, wakiamua kampeni yao kwa mitandao waseme huyu hawezani, Bwana Speaker, siku ya kura atakuwa anajipata kwa shinda. Kwa hivyo tunyenyekee, tuwasikize kabisa, tuweke mikutano na wao, ndio tuweze kujua ni kitu gani wangependa kufanywa zaidi, ndio tuweze kuwa tunakaa nao vizuri Bwana Speaker. Bwana Speaker, nataka nimalizie hapo, lakini nishauri wenzangu, lazima tuwe macho sana. Lazima tuwe macho, lazima tusikize, na lazima tufuate yale mambo yote wanataka. Na Bwana Speaker, nimeona pia rais ameteua, kabla nimalize nimekumbuka, rais ameteua kamati ya kufuatilia madeni ya Kenya. Na ukifuata vizuri vile amefanya ni vizuri, sababu kutoka mwaka wa 2011 mpaka 2021, leo nimeona ripoti ya mhasibu mkuu wa serikali, Auditor General, akisema ya kwamba miradi mingi haionekani. Ile pesa yote ilichukuliwa 1 trilioni 1.3 trillion shilingi ya Kenya, hiyo miradi haionekani. Kwa hivyo mimi nimefurahi vile hiyo kamati itakuja iseme, sababu mambo mengi ya hizo pesa mingi tunalipa leo hazikuingia kwa ile kazi rasmi zilikuwa ziingie. Wezi omba ndeni ya kulipa mshahara, wezi omba ndeni ya kufanya mambo mengine. Ukiomba ndeni lazima iende kwa mradi fulani. Na kama hakuna miradi iliendelea, ni vizuri hiyo audit tuweze kuona vizuri hiyo pesa yote ambayo tunalipa leo ilifanya kazi gani. Hasa wakati ilifika wa ile handshake ilikuja ile kwa ile last government. Kutoka hiyo wakati ndio mambo ilianza kusambaratika. Na kwa hivyo ni vizuri tuwekwe kwa bayana kabisa ni kazi gani ilifanyika. Vile siku ile ulinishauri Bwana Speaker, lazima tufinye uzaa mahali huko. Lazima tushirikiane tuwe wa Kenya, tufinye kabisa mahali kuna uzaa na tujue ni shinda gani ilitokea, ndio tuweze kumaliza hizi shinda zote na Kenya iweze kupoa Bwana Speaker. Kwa hivyo hata wale shirika la LSK ambao wamesema hawataki kuungana na hiyo kamati, ningewaomba tu waangalie, sababu hata kama katiba ya Kenya imepea nguvu Auditor General kuwafanya audit ya madeni yetu, ni vizuri tuwe na rifari wengine tu kuangalia. LSK yungane pale, shirika la engineer waingie pale na mashirika mengine, ndio tuweze kuona kweli hiyo audit imefanyika vizuri na tuweze kujua ni madeni gani tuko naye na tutalipa namna gani, na hayo madeni tulichukua yamefanya kazi gani katika taifa letu la Kenya. Kwa hivyo nashukuru Bwana Spika, asante sana.
Senator Chimera.
Can I proceed, Mr.
Senator Boni. Senator Boni. Just allow Senator Chimera to make his intervention, and Senator Wakili. Then I will allow you to proceed with your intervention.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Nimeona kwamba leo bunge la Seneti limeamua kuendesha shughuli zake rasmi kwa lugha ya Kiswahili, na hivyo basi kwa heshima kuu utaniruhusu Bwana Spika pia mimi niendeleze haya maudhui kupitia naibu wako Mheshimiwa Kadhuri kutoka kaunti ya Meru. Bwana Spika, kwanza asante kwa fursa hii Bwana Spika niweze kuchangia katika mswada huu wote Bwana Spika. Kwa niaba yangu binafsi na familia yangu Bwana Spika, na kwa niaba ya wananchi watukufu kutoka kaunti ya Kwale Bwana Spika, nataka niseme pole sana kwa zile familia ambazo ziliweza kuwapoteza vijana wao wakati wa rabsha hii, wakati wa maandamano Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ni masikitiko makuu sana kuona kwamba kijana katika nchi hii anaweza kupoteza uhai, anaweza kupoteza maisha kiholela katika mikono ya maafisa wa polisi Bwana Spika. Vile vile Bwana Spika, nichukue fursa hii nipeane ilani kwa ile tume ya IPOA ambayo tumeiona kwa muda mrefu ikizembea katika majukumu yake. Hatujawahi sikia kwamba maafisa wa polisi wamepatikana, wameshtakiwa, wameachishwa kazi na hatua kali ya kisheria imechukuliwa Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nataka niseme kwa niaba ya hawa vijana wetu Genz, ile tume ya IPOA safari hii hatutakubali kubebwa ufala Bwana Spika. Kumradhi Bwana Spika. Tume hii ya IPOA Bwana Spika ifanye kazi yake kulingana na mujibu wa sheria. Wale maafisa wa polisi ambao walitumia nguvu zaidi kupita kiasi, ambao walifikia hatua ya kuchukua maisha ya vijana wetu, ambao walikuwa hata hawana hatia yoyote Bwana Spika, waachishwe kazi, watambuliwe, washtakiwe na hatua ya kisheria iweze kufuata mkondo wake Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, pia mimi niko hapa Seneti nikiwa katika nchi hii Bwana Spika, na nichukue fursa hii Bwana Spika kwa unyenyekevu niweze kuwapongeza sana hawa vijana wa Genz. Tumekuwa tukiambiwa siku zote Bwana Spika kwamba sisi vijana ni viongozi wa siku zijazo Bwana Spika. Lakini hawa vijana wa Genz Bwana Spika waliamua kwa hiari yao moja kwamba hawatasubiri tena kuwa viongozi wa siku zijazo, bali watajihusisha kiwaziwazi katika siasa ya nchi hii, katika mustakabala wa uongozi wa nchi yetu Bwana Spika. Niwape kongole kwa hilo. Isipokuwa tu Bwana Spika, tofauti yangu na wao ni pale tu ambapo waliruhusu majangili waje wavamie mali ya umma, waje walete uporaji, waje walete ghasia Bwana Spika. Lakini nina imani kwamba tumeweza kuwasikiza Bwana Spika, na kwamba saizi kama uongozi tupo tayari kuzidi kukaa na wao. Na mimi kama kiongozi wao, kwa sababu ninawakilisha vijana katika Senate, nataka niombe msamaha ya kwamba pengine katika upungufu wangu wa kibinadamu hatujaweza kukaa na vijana wenzangu nikasikia kilio chao, ili tuweze kusonga mbele kama vijana, tuweze kukomboa taifa letu, tuweze kuwa na taifa ambalo ni la amani, na tuko tayari kusonga mbele Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, wakati huu kama viongozi si wakati wa kulimbikiziana lawama Bwana Spika. Nimesikiza wenzangu wakizungumza hapa, nasitaki kutaja majina Bwana Spika, na wamekwenda kufikia hatua ya kwamba tunarushiana maneno ambayo sio ya kiongozi Bwana Spika. Ni jambo la kusikitisha kusikiza maseneta wenzangu hapa wakiwakashifu vikali wabunge wenzao katika ile nyumba ndogo kuhusu huu mfuko wa CDF Bwana Spika. Nafikiri kwa sasa kama uongozi, kama nchi, hatupaswi kuendeleza tofauti zetu Bwana Spika za kisiasa au za kimajukumu Bwana Spika. Ule mfuko wa CDF Bwana Spika Ni kweli kuna tetesi, ni kweli kuna tatuishi fulani, lakini niseme kwamba na ikumbuke kwamba tumekuwa mahakamani siku mingi tukijaribu kubadilisha sheria hii, tukijaribu kuifinyanga ili iweze kuwa laini na katiba yetu. Bwana Spika, sio sawa kumlimbikizia mbunge lawama wakati huu kwa sababu yeye ana ile mfuko wa CDF. Bwana Spika, na nafikiri mimi mwenyewe naezungumza hapo Bwana Spika, mimi nimekuwa mtu ambaye nimefaidi kutokana na mipango ya hii CDF. Bwana Spika, masomo yangu yote kuanzia shule ya upili hadi chuo kikuu Bwana Spika, nikisomea pale chuo kikuu cha Nairobi University Bwana Spika, niliweza kufadhiliwa sana na CDF ya Lungalunga Bwana Spika, na itakuwa si vyema kumruhusu kiongozi mwenzangu ndani ya bunge hili Bwana Spika kuikashifu hazina hii Bwana Spika. Ikiwa mtu anaona ana shida na hazina hii Bwana Spika, aende mahakamani ama alete mswada wa kuifutilia mbali hazina hii ya CDF Bwana Spika. Vile vile Bwana Spika, pia niseme kwa kikamilifu bwana, nimesikia ya kwamba tume ile ya SRC Bwana Spika imependekeza kwamba viongozi au wafanyikazi wa umma wapate nyongeza ya mshahara Bwana Spika. Niseme kwamba mimi mwenyewe kama Seneta Chimera, sio jukumu langu kujiongezea mshahara wala kujipunguzia mshahara Bwana Spika. Kuna tume ambayo inafanya kazi hii Bwana Spika, lakini hali tulio nayo saizi ya kiuchumi Bwana Spika hairuhusu kamwe hata kuwa na fikra yoyote ile ya kumwongezea, wacha kiongozi, wacha mbunge, hata mfanyikazi yoyote yule wa umma mshahara Bwana Spika. Mimi ninakataa pendekezo lile kama kiongozi binafsi, na nafikiri sio vyema kwamba tuongezewe nyongeza ya mshahara wakati huu, ili hali tunajua nchi ipo mahali pabaya, tuko katika madeni Bwana Spika. Tunataka kupata ajira kwa vijana wetu. Tunataka kuhakikisha kwamba vijana wetu wamepata nafasi sawia ya kuweza kufanya biashara na serikali yetu Bwana Spika. Tunataka kuona kwamba vijana wetu hawa wa Genz, manake wamelia Bwana Spika, na wamekuwa na matakwa yao Bwana Spika. Kwa siku nyingi tumeona kwamba kumekuwa na ukandamizaji Bwana Spika katika maisha ya vijana wetu hawa. Vijana wetu hawa hawapati fursa ya kufanya biashara na serikali yetu. Niruhusu nitohoe Bwana Spika ya kwamba hakuna vijana wetu ambao wanapata tenda kwa urahisi Bwana Spika. Wanahisi kupata tenda ile Bwana Spika, lazima mfahamu Mheshimiwa Sifuna kwa mfano, mfahamu gavana wa Kiambu kwa mfano, ndio ili uweze kupata tenda Bwana Spika. Na wanalilia haki yao Bwana Spika. Ni lazima kama viongozi tuamke, tutengeneze mustakabali ambao kwamba unampa fursa kijana Mkenya kuweza kupata fursa ya kufanya biashara na serikali, kuweza kupata fursa ya kuandikwa kazi katika serikali bila kutegemea mtu ambaye anamjua atamsaidia au kipenda godfather Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, pia nichukue fursa hii nimshukuru sana Mheshimiwa Rais William Ruto kwa ile hekima yake ya kuweza kusikia kilio cha vijana wetu Bwana Spika. Na yeye ni kweli ameteremka, ameshuka pale alipokuwa, na yupo tayari Bwana Spika kuzungumza na vijana hawa. Na mimi niwaombe hawa vijana Genz, na niseme kwamba tumesikia kilio chenu kama viongozi wenu, na tupo tayari Bwana Spika kuketi na vijana hawa. Ijapokuwa wanasema hawana uongozi, lakini nina imani kutakuwa na muundo ambao tutaweza kuketi Bwana Spika kama nchi, tuweze kujadiliana, tuweze kuridhiana ili tupate fursa ya kusonga mbele kama kitu kimoja. Ndio ili nchi hii iweze kuwa na amani, iweze kuwa na utulivu Bwana Spika, tuweze kujivunia yale matunda ya katiba yetu hii, na mwisho wa siku Bwana Spika, nchi yetu ya Kenya izidi kutambulika ulimwenguni mzima kama nchi ambayo ina amani na inamsikiza mwananchi wake. Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa hayo mengi yao machache. Shukran sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Sigei, wakili.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I would also like, in a very brief way into the motion that was tabled before this hallowed house by the leader of majority and the leader of minority. And from the very onset, Mr. Speaker, I would like to appreciate the bipartisanship that they took as leadership in order for us as a house to reflect and ask ourselves the questions which this House has been asking for the last 3 sessions that we have debated on this motion. And Mr. Speaker, Tuesday, 25th of June, 2024 will remain in the history of not only this country, it is not going to remain in the history of the members of this House, but it will remain as a very crucial day in the history of the world, because it's on this day, Mr. Speaker, that this House experienced what in history had never happened before. This Parliament was attacked. This Parliament was visited, and members of this House, members of the Secretariat, and the public witnessed what we had never witnessed before. It didn't just happen, Mr. Speaker, but it happened so that we reflect the way we are doing now. We've done this before, we're still going on, and I believe out of this reflection that we have had as a House, we will come up with solutions. We will come up with recommendations. We will come up with ideas that we as Kenyan leaders who are in this space for this time, for this term, will be able to guide the future generations and also the style of leadership that we have had. Mr. Speaker, the demonstrations that we had sent a message not only to us as leaders, but to the rest of the Kenyans, because indeed it was not just a matter of coming into this House. Mr. Speaker, the young Kenyans who decided to take up their rightful constitutional mandate, which is provided for as a right under Article 37 of the Constitution of Kenya, to come and tell the world that things are not okay, that the leadership of this country has had challenges in executing its mandate. And it is during that time, Mr. Speaker, that indeed everyone did appreciate that there was something wrong. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we have talked, we have reflected, and we have come to the conclusion that it was not just about the finance bill. It was not just about the issues that the National Assembly had debated, engaged the public, and passed, or rather decided to deal with in the finance bill. It went beyond that. The conversation, Speaker, has gone beyond that particular bill. And I believe it is that day that will help us as leaders, those who are in office now, those who will be in office in the future, to reflect and get to know what is it that they are supposed to do when they are in office. Mr. Speaker, among the very critical issues that that particular day brought out, and which has become a subject of a lot of conversations both within and outside Parliament, is about corruption. It is not that we had issues as Kenyans from paying the taxes. The youth of this country are saying, this money that we pay into the government coffers needs to be utilized in a manner that is reflective of the financial or economic situation that we are in this country. And Mr. Speaker, members here have talked, and I asked myself, especially when we had the first debate on this particular motion of the day, whether we were talking for the cameras, whether we were talking because we needed to talk, or whether we were talking because we got the opportunity to express that which we had. I believe and I hope that all the leaders who've talked to this motion in this House spoke to themselves as individuals, asked themselves the hard questions that they were pronouncing as to whether or not when we sit back in our various offices, we utilize the resources that we do. It is not enough to accuse or blame other leaders and say so-and-so has not done what they are supposed to do. The members of the National Assembly have failed. The members of other House, in this case, have also not done their job. Those who are in the executive have failed. How about us as a House of the City? Those are the hard questions that I believe at the end of all this debate, we should be able to reflect as leaders and ask ourselves, when I sit back, when I oversight the county government that I represent, do I do it because I have failed to get a share of that which goes out there, or I'm doing it because I want to make sure that service delivery to the people of Bomet is within the amount of resources that has been allocated to that particular county? Do I do it because I am fighting a political score? Do I desire to also engage for purposes of political gain? Mr. Speaker, I believe this motion and the recommendations that we are going to make will be those which are for posterity. It will be the recommendations that if today you were to be in that office as a governor who has exited from this office as a senator, you will be able to do it because it is the right thing to do. It is not enough, Mr. Speaker, to blame everyone and say, where did we lose and where did we miss the track? I believe it didn't have to take the young Kenyans to demonstrate, to let us know that there is a problem or that there is an issue with leadership. It is time that we reflect and deal with issues on governance at all levels of leadership, whether it is at the Senate, whether it is in the National Assembly, or whether in the county governments, where we all know there is rampant corruption. Other government agencies which we have also blamed and have issued statements have got also their position to take in the failures that they have exhibited in their governance. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, the action by the President to engage the public, both in the X-Space, the address that he has made to the country, the admission and the retreat in his withdrawal of the finance bill is a goodwill that he showed to the country that we should be now ready as Kenyans to have a candid conversation and agree on a way forward. Mr. Speaker, yesterday when the IEBC bill, which is a product of bipartisan and NADCO engagement, was signed out, it also bore fruit and gave direction into the way with which we would desire to run this country. And I believe the framework that has been set, which will start off next week, will feed into a lot of the conversations that we have had, both in this house and outside, as to the kind of leadership that we would want as a country. I believe the dialogue that will come will also be implemented not only at the executive level, but also in this house as the House of Parliament. It will still go to also the management of our debt, because it is not that it started yesterday. It didn't start on the 25th of June. It started before. It has been happening. It became heavy when it had to take the young ones to tell us that you have failed in the leadership style that we have had. And I believe that as leaders, it has given us a new lease of life. It has given us an opportunity to reflect and also decide on the direction which we would want to take this country. Mr. Speaker, the young ones talked about employment opportunities. They have gone to school, they have trained, they have experience, and they need to do that which they went to school to study for. But we don't have that opportunity. Why? Because we have not been able to advance and enhance, for instance, in our agriculture sector. We have not expanded in the industrial space where we would be in a position to create for them opportunities. Is this something that we can do? Of course, Mr. Speaker, yes. If only we are able to manage the resources of this country in a manner that will make sure that if it is for purposes of public, it be utilized for purposes of the public. The political scores aside, this, Mr. Speaker, is a motion that I believe if this House makes its recommendations for purposes of implementation, it is not just enough also that such recommendations are made to gather dust like any other or every other statement, resolution, and decisions that have previously been made. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is an opportunity that we say we all need to take it up for purposes of making sure that Kenya becomes the country that we want to look at in the future. When we talk about the cost of living, it didn't come up on the 25th of June. It has been a conversation that we have had. And this is one of the things that the leadership of President William Ruto, when it got into office, when it set up the NADCO committee, it was an issue that you say it is not a product of one day, it is not an event, it is a process that comes out of a long-term engagement. And the engagements that were done, the engagements that is going on, should be one of those things that we say we fast track so that we make sure that we help the people of Kenya. The issue about demonstration is a right. And having lost the number of Kenyans whom we lost, whether they are 2, whether they are 10, whether they are 25, one life is one too many to lose, especially when people are fighting for their rights. And we look up to those who can take their lives for the sake of building the nation. And we, of course, as a house, we have shared with the families that lost their loved ones. We've shared our condolences with the young ones and the friends and also the relatives of those whom we've lost. And I believe out of all this experience that we have had, Kenya should not be a place where we exercise our democratic space, we lose lives. We should be able to have an opportunity to engage. We should be able to have the space to exercise those rights. And we should be able to have the leadership that is in office that will appreciate that this is a right that cannot be taken away from and given the space. The most unfortunate thing, Mr. Speaker, is a situation where we have the leadership. For instance, in this particular case, we have not had the Inspector General of Police speaking, even for a second, even sending messages of condolences. Yet he's the one in charge of an independent unit of security of this country. This is a failure on the part of those leadership. And this is an opportunity that the young Kenyans have given us to make sure that we correct those challenges, we correct those anomalies. For those who are unable to do it, let them give space for other Kenyans who are competent, who are ready, who are willing, and who will deliver this country from where it is to a better position. Mr. Speaker, as we go to the future, I believe this is a moment that the message that came out of Kenyans, that came from the young ones, that we have had as a house to spare a whole 4 sessions to debate on this motion of national importance. It has given us the opportunity to correct and right the wrong, and as a matter of strategy, have a proper strategy going forward so that we don't lose the opportunities as Kenyans, and we become a house that in generations to come, it will be the house that we will be remembered. I do not ascribe to the blame game that we had. The other day, members of this house accusing our colleagues in the National Assembly of misuse or abuse, when in itself, I would rather say than that we first of all have got to reflect on ourselves and reflect on the entire leadership and also the way we have utilized the resources of this country. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to once again appreciate the leadership of this House for making sure that this particular motion is given prominence, is given opportunity so that every member of this House speaks, because we speak as a representation of the people. We speak on behalf of our people. And this message should go across all those other people in leadership, including the county governments and the governors who are in office, where we all say this is where the problem is. We have resources, send out to the county governments. Every other aspect of it has got an issue to do with challenges. In my county, like Bomet, for example, the young generations have said tomorrow they're going to go to the streets. And when they say that they're going to go to the streets to demand for delivery of services, it is not because of anything. It is because they have issues with the governance that is in office today. And when they say so, these are the people who do not need to be reminded of their rights. They have woken up. They have realized that there is a miss in the leadership. And that space can only be filled when people are given the right to demand what is there rightfully in place in law, and also to exercise that right without the interference of anyone. And I want to encourage Kenyans to do the same thing, because this is the only way we will keep the leaders who are in office in check. We will also let them know that if there is a failure, we will not keep quiet. We will let them know this is our right as Kenyans, this is the right thing to do, and if they are not ready to change and do as it's expected, it is their time to pack and leave and give room for Kenyans who are ready to have leadership. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity and look forward to the recommendations that will change the style of leadership in our great country of Kenya. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Sigei. At some point, I saw Senator Julius Mulgo interested to make his remarks. Are you still interested, Senator Mulgo?
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the debate on this motion be adjourned pursuant to
But actually don't struggle so much because there is no other senator who is interested to speak. So it is already concluded.
so okay.
But then, Honorable Senators, when you have an issue that you want to canvass, the only person you should approach is the chair, so that the chair is well informed of intention. So if the chair is not informed, then you make the chair to look like he's disorganized or chairing the session. So the communication within to the table you should have done even before you approach the table to the chair of the session. And I understand it is Senator Boni Karwale who has done this. You just have your seat.
Mr. Speaker, sir, as the whip, I wish to apologize to you. We had done these consultations with Speaker Kingi, but failed to then bring it to your attention. And Mr. Speaker, why the distinguished senator from West P is taking the mandate is because, having spoken to this motion already, I cannot be able to move a dilatory motion, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah,
I
that
beg for your
is why
indulgence.
Senator Boni Karwale, whatever he is doing is right. It's right. I have no problem with what he is intending to do. But the process is the one I'm questioning. The process of doing what he's doing, because I was making some communication and then also he's standing to do something else which I was not privy to. So let me get a good brief from the table, then we can proceed. Mulgo, Senator Julius Mulu, proceed. What is it that we intend to do?
So I propose so that we have consultation on possible amendment to this motion. And so I request Senator Methu to support or to second.
Honorable Speaker. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I know because we have made various contributions, and it's not just a motion like any other. This is a motion that would have wanted to have resolutions on it. So that is why I would want and seek that colleagues agree that we adjourn so that we shall have resolutions to this particular motion. So I second, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah, let me put the question now. That this is according to standing under 110.1, that the debate of the motion on the state of the nation be now adjourned. As many as of the similar opinion say aye. Aye. As those of the contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. So let's go to the next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024.
Senator Mwenda Kataya Mofa. I can see you are fully armed to prosecute your motion.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopt the report of Committee on Delegated Legislation on Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024, legal notice number 48 of 2024, and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024, legal notice number 49 of 2024, read on the table of the House on Wednesday, 20th of March 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 15(1) of the Statutory Instruments 2013 and starting under 195(4)(b), announce the same regulations. Honorable Speaker, the Senate Select Committee on Delegated Legislation is established under starting order number 195(1) of the Senate starting orders with the powers to utilize statutory instruments submitted to the House and ensure that they are consistent with the Constitution of Kenya and other acts of Parliament. The committee is expected to consider in respect of statutory instruments whether it is in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, the Act pursuant to which it is made, or other relevant written laws. Honorable Speaker, I want to give you an overview of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024, legal notice number 48 of 2024, and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024, legal notice number 49 of 2024. Honorable Speaker, allow me to highlight some of the provisions of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024, legal notice number 49 of 2024, and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024, legal notice number 48 of 2024. The regulations may be cried as the regulation may be cited as the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2004 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2004. The Cabinet Secretary for Health has laid on the powers conferred by Section 50 of the Social Health Insurance Act number 16 of 2024 and Section 44(6) of the Social Health Insurance Act to make and publish the regulations and the rules respectively. Honorable Speaker, the Social Insurance General Regulations 2024 are intended to provide for, among others, the implementation of the Primary Health Fund, the Social Health Insurance Fund, and the Emergency Chronic and Critical Illness Fund established in the Act. The regulations also provide for the mandatory registration of every person resident in Kenya pursuant to Section 26(1) of the Act and the mode of payment contributions pursuant to Section 27(1) and 2 of the Act. Honorable Speaker, the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024, on the other hand, intends to provide for the Dispute Resolution Tribunal as established under Section 44 of the Social Health Insurance Fund, Act 2023, for the purpose of hearing and determining complaints, disputes, appeals arising from the Act. Honorable Speaker, the Social Health Insurance General Regulation 2024 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024 was submitted to the Senate by the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Health, on 8th of March 2024 and tabled before the House on 20th of March 2024. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Section 16 of the Statutory Instruments Act, the committee invited the Cabinet Secretary for Health, the Council of Governors, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, alongside the Kenya Medical Association on that 23rd of May, to a stakeholder engagement to discuss the two regulations. Only the Council of Governors and the Kenya Medical Association attended the meeting, Honorable Speaker. The Cabinet Secretary requested the committee to schedule another meeting as she was away on official duty during the 23rd May 2024 meeting. The committee agreed to meet with the Cabinet Secretary on another date, but resolved to engage the two stakeholders who attended. The Council of Governors and the Kenya Medical Association raised concerns on the readiness of the Ministry of Health to implement the regulations by commencement date of 1st of July 2024. The two stakeholders pointed out that while it was a few weeks before the commencement of the regulations, the ministry had not procured a system with a centralized digital platform that will onboard all services and service providers. The implementation of the Digital Act 2024 ought to have preceded that of the Social Health Insurance Act 2024 in order to provide an infrastructure on which the latter would be based on. B, the authority had not carried out means testing to determine contributions that will be paid by households whose income is not derived from the salaried employment. C, as required in Regulation 18.4 of the Social Health Insurance General, Regulation 24, the regulations, the authority in consultations with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for cooperative, micro, small and medium enterprises and development and other financing institutions was to provide premium financing to non-salaried people to enable them pay their annual contributions within the intervals under which their income becomes available. Given that premium financing is a loan, the ministry couldn't clarify how this was implementable on people who are not salaried. The authority had not conducted nationwide registration of contributors and beneficiaries. E, regulation that one of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations which provides that the accreditation of health providers and the Act shall be done by a body responsible for accreditation to the established Act under the Act contradicts Section 33 of the Act by providing that the empowerment and the accreditation of health care providers under the Act shall be done by the Social Health Authority. The body has not been established, rendering the procedure of empowerment and accreditation of health providers not clear. Other anomalies pointed out during the stakeholders' engagement included the benefits package and tariffs advisory panel established under regulations 41, 2 of the Social Health Insurance and General Regulations ought to have been established in the Social Health Insurance Act and not subsidiary registration. G, the lack of justification for the membership of the benefits package and tariffs advisory panel. The ministry could not clarify on the choice of the local public university to nominate the chairperson. The rationale of having a public university nominate the chairperson, the inclusion of the development partners in a legal body to determine benefits under the funds from Kenya contributions, which raises the issue of sovereignty and conflict of interest between the development partners, mother states, and Kenya, at the rationale, including ENET, given not all NGOs in the health sector are registered with ENET, as well as the rationale and choice of including a local public university instead of the authority to constitute the Joint Secretariat under Regulation 43. H, the tariffs to determine the benefits to be enjoyed by contributors and beneficiaries were not ready and therefore not provided in the regulations. There is cross-referencing in the regulations with provisions that did not exist in the parent act, that is the Social Health Insurance Act, for instance, primary care network, which is the regulations, are not in the parent act. The rationale behind the registration of minors, with which in the stakeholders' opinion was unnecessary, being that they are already dependents. The social authority in the stakeholders' opinion ought to use data already captured by the National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF. The regulation did not provide for verification of doctors' registration details. There was need, therefore, to provide a portal for doctors to verify their details. Honorable Speaker, due to the serious matter of urgency of regulations which were to enable the implementation of the Social Health Insurance Act to commence on 1st of July, the committee met with the Principal Secretary, State Department for Medical Services on Wednesday, 19th June 2024, and various issues with regard to the regulations were raised, particularly on the lack of detailed evidence of public participation and the unavailability of a schedule to the regulations with the tariffs. During the meeting, Honorable Speaker, the Principal Secretary responded to some of these issues raised by the Council of Governors and the Kenya Medical Association. Notably, the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Health, did not engage with the committee on these regulations, Honorable Speaker. And the rules, despite having been invited on 3 different occasions for a meeting with the committee, the Cabinet Secretary sent letters explaining an availability dated 22nd May 2024, 18th June 2024, and 21st June 2024. So on those 3 consecutive dates, Honorable Speaker, the committee sat and drew these findings. Having examined the regulations against the Constitution and other relevant laws, the committee observed the following, Honorable Speaker. Article 10 states that the national values and principles of governance bind all state organs, state officers, public officers, and all other persons whenever they enact any law or make public policy decisions. Article 10(2)(a) further lists public participation as being one of the national values and principles of governance. In the explanatory memorandum forwarded to the committee, the Cabinet Secretary stated that the ministry called for submissions from the public and the stakeholders from private entities as well as public officers and members of the public. B. Article 43(1) of the Constitution of Kenya 2020 provides for the right of every person to be the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services, including reproductive health care, to accessible and adequate housing, and to reasonable standards of sanitation, to be free from hunger, and to have adequate food for acceptable quality, to clean and safe water in adequate quantities, to social security, and to education. Article 43(2)(3) provides that every person shall not be denied emergency medical treatment, and that shall provide appropriate social security to persons who are unable to support themselves and their dependents. The regulations were intended to create a framework for the implementation of the Social Insurance Act to advance the realization of socio-economic rights under Article 43(1). Another observation, Honorable Speaker, was the legislative power was delegated under an Act of Parliament, that is the Social Health Insurance Act 2023, which delegates the regulations making power to the Cabinet in dealing with matters of health in the country. The above, notwithstanding, Honorable Speaker, the fourth schedule of the Constitution indicates that provision of primary health care is a devolved function, while the national government, through the Ministry of Health, retains the role of the policy making and implementation under its mandate. The regulations are limited to the implementation of the Social Health Insurance Act. Based on this reason, there was need for the regulations and rules to take notice of the importance of the county government as key pillars for implementation of such regulations to the public at the county level, Honorable Speaker. Moreover, the committee could not ascertain and verify from the documentary response in the industry the extent to which the input from the counties through the Council of Governors submissions during public participation and other stakeholders engagement were considered and incorporated into the final regulations. Honorable Speaker, another observation was that the regulations were in line with the Section 5 and 5A of the Statutory Instruments Act 23, which Act requires the regulation-making body to consult persons who are likely to be affected by an instrument. The ministry presented an explanatory memorandum which explained that consultations were carried out, the scope, the outcome of such consultations, the changes made on the registration after the public consultations, and also explained the purpose of the registration and the rules. The regulatory impact statement, that is the RIS, was provided to accompany the regulatory for parliamentary scrutiny as required under Section 6, 7, and 8 of the Statutory Instruments Act. However, the ministry in its submissions failed to explain the financial implications of the application of the rules and the regulations of the public and why means of achieving the objective of instruments were not considered. Honorable, and the rules having been invited on 3 different occasions, I think there's a mix-up somewhere. Honorable Speaker, having gone through these provisions, the committee sat down and drew quite a number of recommendations. Mr. Speaker, based on the observations made, the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation therefore makes the following recommendations. After careful consideration of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Laws 2024, pursuant to Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments and starting under 195(4)(b), the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation does not accede to the Social Health Insurance Regulations and the legal notice number instruments be annulled. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that this House announce the Social Health Insurance General Regulations and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to call upon Honorable Manzo to support this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
To support or to second?
To second the motion.
Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm one of the members of the Committee of Delegated Legislation. And Mr. Speaker, as you have known, between myself and you, we've been in the National Assembly for 10 years, and now we are serving our third term of Parliament at Senate. Mr. Speaker, I've been blessed to have been a member of delegated legislation for 12 years now, Mr. Speaker, from the National Assembly to the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, all that experience, Mr. Speaker, with these regulations which the committee has sought to nullify dealing with the shift, we had difficulties which I have never seen in my lifetime in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we summoned the minister who is supposed to be the owner of the regulations and who is supposed to sign the regulations 3 times. Every time, Mr. Speaker, will accommodate her. When she's not there, she will send a letter. And Mr. Speaker, you are aware, this House can only fail, can only accept a reason of a minister if they have given a notice in advance. And secondly, if they are having a cabinet meeting, or there is a very compelling reason, Mr. Speaker, why the minister isn't present. But despite flimsy excuses and not even at any one time be at the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Health never showed up to come and own our own regulations. And this, we were now left with the authority and also the permanent secretary, who, despite the explanation, there was one major big problem, Mr. Speaker, with these regulations. There were the tariffs, Mr. Speaker, which were supposed to accompany these regulations. And these tariffs, up to the very last day, Mr. Speaker, they never left the Attorney General's office, as the ministry claimed, and they were expecting the Attorney General's office to expedite. Mr. Speaker, I had expected the minister and the PS to go and camp at the Attorney General's office, knowing that, first of all, they never came for pre-publication. They gave a gazette notice and, in fact, announced that these regulations were to be effective by 1st July. Of course, when the tariffs were never published, and of course, when there was a little bit of disorganization in the presentation of these regulations, and keenly with the tariffs missing, then the regulations had a gaping hole. So we pleaded with the ministry, let's have these tariffs. We have never seen them up to today. And without the tariffs, then you have a very big component of the regulations not accompanying and not be part of the regulations, and they cannot come when the regulations have come to effect. We have always advised ministries, Mr. Speaker, that they should do pre-publication with the committee. It makes work very easy for them, and they're able to do a checklist and make sure that that checklist, as per Statutory Instruments Act, is complied with, the Constitution, and any other relevant law. Unfortunately, this never happened, and we painfully proposed to annul these regulations, for they never met fully public participation, which is a requirement of under Article 10 of the Constitution. The ministry claimed that it did public consultation. One of the major stakeholders of this regulation is the COG, the governors, Mr. Speaker. If the counties who are supposed, now that health is devolved under the Constitution, if the counties are not properly consulted and they are not even aware of the publications of the regulations, it becomes very difficult. And the COG has come out very strongly to our committee, whatever regulations are passed without consulting them, as a major stakeholder, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, this did not happen in this case. We had also the impact assessment. You know, they have to provide an impact assessment. And in the event you have to give an exception, is there, under Section 9 of the Statutory Instruments Act, then there is a threshold of that particular abstaining or failing to provide. So there were so many gapings, and now that the minister never turned up, the people the minister sent really tried in vain without giving proper explanations as to why the regulations had so much missing. One of the biggest problems was how they were going to assess the needfulness of a family in the Republic of Kenya. And we have quite a number of many needful families which may now qualify to be paid for by the state. Mr. Speaker, that could not be availed. We waited for the minister to bring it on board, and she never did. And therefore, there was left a big problem. And even that, the time we were doing this annulment, the Gen Zs had not even come up with their own many complaints they have come up with. And the issue of health insurance has been a big debate in the country. And therefore, there was every need to make very good law and subsequently regulations so that it doesn't generate a negative debate. So I think Senate has done very well, and I want to convince all senators to uphold the position of the committee. Let the minister go to the drawing board. Let the minister do public participation. Let the minister consider memorandums from experts and the stakeholders of the county governments. Let the minister comply with the law of statutory instrument. Otherwise, if we were to allow these regulations in the way they had been presented and without the tariffs from the Attorney General's office, which were also supposed to be gazetted, then we are going to bring more sores into the problems of Kenyans. Health is a very, very serious matter. You heard the senator from Migori talk of his experiences, how he unfortunately lost his mother due to lack of very little money, due to lack of health insurance, due to lack of such. And many, many Kenyans are going through this. Many of these Gen Zs are not insured. Many of these Gen Zs and many other Kenyans want to know how they'll be treated when there is a need of this nature, when you have been shot by police, when you have been injured in a road accident, and that data has to be availed. One of the major problems was how they were going to transit from the current NHIF to the new regulations and to the new law. I believe government institutions go through an automatic transition. They enjoy perpetual succession. But these answers were missing, and this is one institution. And the management of this has been part of the big-time corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker. It has enriched a few individuals and made very many people poor. We are still doing a rampage for people who are unable to pay school fees and university fees, medical fees. Many, many people lose their when they get sick. And therefore, there's a need for us, the Senate, to make sure that we interrogate regulations thoroughly. I really want to thank the chairman of the committee, and the Honorable Senator Mofaya. I want to thank the secretariat of the committee, the lawyers of the committee, for being so thorough and for bringing forth a lot of issues, a lot of questions, and for being of a great assistance to analyze the law and to point out to the ministry. And before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Committee of Senate Delegated Legislation made sure it gave the Ministry of Health enough chances to correct whatever messes they had created in the regulations. But unfortunately, they did not, and the Act cannot be implemented without proper regulation. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second and urge Senate to reject these torturous regulations, which are unconstitutional, they are illegal, and this will go a long way in helping solve the problems of Kenyans, especially the Gen Zs and all Kenyans who suffer very much when they get sick or they go to hospitals. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ask the Minister to be vigilant, and together with the permanent secretaries and her and all the team to be vigilant so that Kenyans may be served well. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Thank you very much, Senator from Makueni, for this, for seconding the motion. And now, Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024 laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 2nd of July 2024. and that pursuant to Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act, the Senate resolved to annul 1. The Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024, Legal Notice number 49 of 2024, and 2. The Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024, Legal Notice number 48 of 2024. Honorable Senators, I'll now call upon members who are willing to speak to this particular motion, and I'll give the opportunity to Senator Munhaji Mohamed Faki, Senator for Mombasa.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya sheria endelezi ya bunge la Seneti katika kuchunguza na kuidhinisha kanuni za sheria ya afya ya kijamii ambazo zililetwa hapa bungeni na zilichapishwa katika gazeti rasmi la serikali namba 49/2004, 48/2004. Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ningependa kuipongeza kamati hii ikiongozwa na Senator Mwenda Gataya Mofaya kwa umahiri wake ithibitishia kamati kwamba amefuata sheria ambazo zinahusika katika kupitisha au kutengeneza sheria kama hizi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ieleweke kwamba kwanza ile haki ya waziri kutengeneza kanuni kama hizi ni haki ambayo inatolewa na sheria ambayo inapitishwa na bunge. Na tulipopitisha sheria hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri ilikuwa tuko na kikao kule Turkana. Wengi wetu tulikuwa kwa sababu tulijua kwamba kuna mambo ambayo waziri atayaleta na yao mambo yatasambaratisha ile sheria ambayo tulikuwa tumeweza kuipitisha kwa kauli moja. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, imeonekana wazi kupitia kwa ripoti ya kamati kwamba waziri alikosea katika kuchapisha na kuleta kanuni hizi. Kwa hivyo kanuni hizi hazifai kupitishwa na bunge hili ili ziwe ni sheria ambazo zitatumika katika nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia kamati imesema kwamba kwanza hakukuwa na uhusishaji umma wa kisawasawa kulingana na katiba yetu katika kifungu cha 10 na kifungu cha 118 kinasema kwamba uhusishaji umma, yani kwa Kiingereza public participation, ni jambo la msingi ambalo lazima lifuatiliwe. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kuchunguza mambo haya vile vile kifungu cha 5A cha sheria ya Statutory Instruments Act 2012 inasema kwamba ni lazima uhusishaji umma ufanyike na kuwe na ushahidi wa kuonesha wale ambao walihusishwa, wale ambao walialikwa, wale ambao walituma barua na mengineo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza katika kuhusishaji umma sheria hii haikuweza kufuatiliwa. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, katiba ndio mama wa sheria zote katika nchi yetu. Kwa hivyo iwapo hawakufuata katiba, Mheshimiwa Spika, sheria yote ambayo inatungwa inakuwa vibaya. Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hili la uhusishaji umma tunafaa kuliangazia kwa makini sana, kwa sababu juzi wakati sheria ya mswada wa fedha mwaka 2000 ilipopitishwa katika bunge la kitaifa, maoni mengi ya wananchi hayakuzingatiwa, na ndio maana kukaletwa migomo na maandamano ambayo yangeweza kuondolewa iwapo ile sheria na maoni ya umma yalifuatwa katika kutekeleza sheria hiyo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, la kwanza ni kwamba haikufuatwa sheria ya uhusishaji umma katika kutengeneza kanuni hizi. Mheshimiwa Spika, la pili ni kuwa kanuni hizi za afya ya jamii kwa ujumla zinahusisha mambo ambayo yangefaa kuwekwa katika sheria kamili. Yaani masuala ambayo yanatakana yakae katika sheria inayopitishwa na bunge, na masuala ambayo yanatakana yakae katika zile kanuni ambazo waziri baadaye anakwenda kutengeneza kufuatiana na amri ama kufuatiana na uwezo aliopewa na sheria iliyopita kwa bunge. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hapa tunazungumzia kamati ya ushauri ama jopo la ushauri kuhusiana na masuala ya vifurushi vya faida, yani benefits package, pamoja na ushuru unaopaswa kulipwa na kuwekwa katika sheria hiyo. Mheshimiwa Spika, hili ni jopo ambalo Mheshimiwa Spika lilikuwa linafaa liweke katika ile tunaita sheria mama, yani parent law, ambao ni Social Health Insurance Act. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo pia tunasema kwamba inazifanya kanuni hizi kuwa haziko sawa. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la tatu ni kwamba katika kifungu cha 31 cha kanuni hizi kinapingana na sheria ya afya ya jamii kuhusiana na uwezo wa kuweza kuamua ni kina nani ambao watakuwa wanatoa huduma kufuatana na sheria hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, wale ambao kwa Kiingereza wanaitwa accreditation of health providers. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii pia tunasema kwamba ingekuwa sheria kuu inasema vingine na kanuni katika kifungu cha 31 inasema vingine. Mheshimiwa Spika, na tunakubaliana kwamba iwapo sheria mama itakinzana na kanuni, basi sheria mama huwa ndio inachukua kipaumbele, kwa sababu ni sheria ambayo imetungwa na wale wawakilishi wa wananchi moja kwa moja. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la 4 ni kuwa wizara ama jopo husika ambalo lilitayarisha masuala haya ama kanuni hizi haikuweza kupambanua masuala fulani ambayo ni muhimu katika masuala haya. Kwa mfano Mheshimiwa Spika, haikuweza kupambanua mfumo wa mchango wa kila mwaka kwa kila familia. Haikuweza pia kuchanganua majukumu ya serikali kuu na majukumu ya serikali za kaunti, na vile vile mambo mpito ambayo yanatakana kuzungumziwa katika sheria kama hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, tunapozungumzia mambo mpito ni kwamba tumetoka katika sheria ya National Health Insurance Fund, tumekwenda kwa Social Health Insurance Fund. Ni mambo gani ambayo wale ambao walikuwa wakitoa changizo zao katika sheria iliyoondoka ya National Health Insurance Fund watapata katika mfumo mpya? Je, kutakuwa na kupungua kwa mapendekezo ama kupungua kwa zile tunaita benefits ambazo zinakuja kila mwezi, ama mtu anapogonjeka wakati ni mwanachama wa hii sheria mpya ya Social Health Insurance Fund, yani sheria ya afya ya jamii? Mheshimiwa Spika, hayo ni mambo mazito ambayo lazima ilikuwa ipambanuliwe katika sheria. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo lingine ni uhifadhi wa data. Maelezo yangu ambayo nayatoa kulingana na sheria hii, je, yatatumika vipi? Je, anaweza kutumiwa mtu akaenda akaniandikisha mimi katika chama kingine mbali na chama changu cha ODM, ama yanaweza kutumika katika mambo ambayo siku ruhusu mimi mwenyewe kama mhusika yatumike kwa mambo kama hayo? Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, haya ni baadhi ya mambo ambayo tumesema kuwa yanafanya kanuni hizi zisiweze kuweza kupita. Mheshimiwa Spika, na Mheshimiwa Spika, ieleweke kwamba katika kuchunguza kanuni hizi, iwapo kutakuwa na jambo moja peke yake ambalo linakinzana na sheria, kwa mfano ukosefu wa masuala ya uhusishaji umma, ikiwa ni hilo moja peke yake, Mheshimiwa Spika, linatosha kubatilisha kanuni zote, kwa sababu katika sheria hii Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuna uhuru wa kufanya marekebisho, hatuna uhuru wa kufanya amendment. Kwa hivyo usawa ni kwamba sheria lazima iregeshwe na iweze kuchunguzwa tena upya ili iweze kuambatana na sheria na zile kanuni ambazo zimeweka kulingana na sheria ambazo imepitishwa. Spika, katika kamati hii ya sheria endelezi kuna mfumo ambao tunatumia kwa sasa ambao unaipa yule anatengeneza kanuni fursa ya kuja mbele ya kamati kueleza mapendekezo ambayo anataka kuyapeleka, na kamati na mshauri ni vipi ambavyo atafanya ili kuhakikisha kwamba akileta zile kanuni zikishachapishwa katika gazeti rasmi haziwezi kurudi tena zikakataliwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna wizara nyingi ambazo zimekubali mfumo huo, lakini ni masikitiko ni kuwa waziri wa afya katika masuala haya hakuweza kuihusisha kamati kikamilifu ili waweze kupambanua ni mambo gani ambayo wanatakana wayarekebishe ili sheria hii, kanuni hizi zikifika katika bunge zinaweza kupitishwa moja kwa moja. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono mapendekezo ya kamati hii kwamba hizi kanuni ziweze kubatilishwa, kwa sababu kwa sasa kuna mambo mengi ambayo yanautata. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona kwamba kanuni zimesema kuwa hata zile benefits ama mambo walikuwa wakipata wakati tuko katika sheria ya NHIF mengine yamepunguzwa, na haya ni mambo ambayo lazima yaweze kuangaliwa, kwa sababu wananchi wameongeza zile changizo zao, contributions zimeongezeka Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini yale manufaa yameweza kupunguzwa. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema kanuni hizi hazitatufaa na hazitasaidia Mheshimiwa Spika ile ndoto ama azma ya serikali ya kuona kwamba wananchi wa taifa la Kenya wanapata afya bora kulingana na vile ambavyo mfumo wetu ama ruwaza yetu ya mwaka 2030 inasema. Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono kamati hii na nasema kwamba hizi kanuni zitupiliwe mbali. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Faki, you're done?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Honorable members, there being no other senator who is interested in contributing to this particular motion, I call upon the mover to reply. Senator Gataya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it should be noted that the Committee on Delegated Legislation has scrutinized several instruments for that matter. And I wish to sincerely thank quite a number of ministries, including the Ministry of Lands, currently held by my sister, Cabinet Secretary Waume, for getting to know exactly what these regulations really detail. Because, Honorable Speaker, we have a provision where an entity can bring those regulations at the draft stage, sit down with the committee, we put our insights into the input, then we build that document together. But of course, Honorable Speaker, on this case now, the committee found it very difficult to work with the CS in charge because we have several invitations and the CS defined all the invitations to that effect. Considering the fact that error is a very sensitive matter, we couldn't just take it for granted that we could just pass those regulations without having to observe some of those sensitive issues, including the public participation and so many other relevant issues that were raised. To say that we defer this vote, so that pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I request that the putting of the question be deferred to another day.
Thank you. You may take your seat, Senator Gataya. Honorable members, pursuant to Standing Order 84.1, the matter is affecting counties, and therefore, as requested by Mwenda Gataya, the matter, voting on the matter is deferred to the next session, pursuant to Standing Order 66, as requested. Clerk, next order.
Order number 10, motion. Approval of sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County.
Majority Leader, proceed to move this motion.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move this motion, which is the approval of the Senate to be approval of the sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County. Aware that the Senate of Kenya is established under Article 93 of the Constitution, and its main role as set out at Article 96 is to represent, serve and protect the interest of counties and their governments. Further aware of the critical role that the Senate plays in the interlinkage between national and county levels of government, and the need to enhance interaction between Senate and county governments as a means of bringing Senate closer to the counties and the general public, acknowledging the success made during the sittings of the Senate outside Nairobi, held in Uasin Gishu, Kitui, and Turkana counties in September 2018, 2019, and 2023, respectively. Further acknowledging that the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee that a sitting of the Senate to be held away from the traditional premises of Parliament buildings, Nairobi, during the term of the 13th Parliament and the subsequent resolution of the Senate made on 8th of March 2023 to hold plenary and committee sittings in the Senate for a one-week period within the month of September in every session of the 4th Senate, except during an election year, with an objective to 1, promote the role and work of the Senate and enhance public awareness regarding business of the Senate and Parliament in general. 2, highlight existing and new opportunities for engagement in legislative process. 3, develop and strengthen partnerships at the county level of government. And 4, provide opportunity to members and staff of the county assemblies to learn and share best practices with senators and parliamentary officers. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 126(1) of the Constitution, the Senate resolves to hold its plenary and committee sittings in Busia County from 23rd to 27th of September 2024. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a very important tradition that we've established as a House. We have gone to Turkana last year. We have been to Uasin Gishu, which was the inaugural Senate Mashinani program. We went to Kitui, Mr. Speaker, and the feedback that we continue to get from the people of Kenya is that engages more. Mr. Speaker, it is increasingly becoming clear that there is need for a deeper connection between the people that we represent and us as their leaders. In the present crisis facing the country, where many citizens are up in arms, Mr. Speaker, and challenging and calling for more accountability from their elected representatives and officials, then Senate Mashinani provides a perfect opportunity for us as representatives of the people, specifically as directed by Article 96, Mr. Speaker, to engage at the county levels with various factions of the county government, Mr. Speaker, and senators appreciate for themselves the work that is going on in the rolling out of devolution programs. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, other institutions can as well learn from us, such as the county assemblies, which get to interact with our very professional staff and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and learn more on how to better interact and learn best practices with regards to legislative work. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly impressed that in the last seasons where we have gone out, there have been very interactive forums and many resolutions have come out. I know for a fact, for example, Mr. Speaker, that when we went to Uasin Gishu, there had been a long-standing issue between the county government of Uasin Gishu and the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. It was the then Standing Committee on Health, after sitting down with the management of the hospital and the county government of Uasin Gishu, then led by our now colleague Senator Jackson Mandago, that were able to resolve that long-standing dispute. And the residents of Uasin Gishu were able to appreciate and say that is what we have always called for, because the residents of county of Uasin Gishu, Mr. Speaker, did not have a county referral hospital. The Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital is a national facility for which they have to share with the rest of the region. Almost 25 counties that are featured in the western part of the country all rely on Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. And it was during that interactive session, Mr. Speaker, that that was resolved. When we went to Kitui, Mr. Speaker, I do recall quite fondly our interactions with various members of the public. I always particularly quote the case, Mr. Speaker, of our Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And I don't know if Senator Faki was part of that committee, Mr. Speaker, that they visited Kitui prisons. And just during that interactive session, they were able to unlock a stalemate between members of the public and the prisons department, many hundreds of people, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that's why even people are up in arms against how we operated as a country, Mr. Speaker. We had close to 200 prisoners or remandees that were being kept inside police cells, costing the government more than the fines that we were supposed to pay for them to be released. 3,000, 5,000,
You know, to accommodate a remandee in our prisons, Mr. Speaker, perhaps it costs 200, 300, 400 shillings or 500 shillings per day. If you keep that fellow in for more than 10 days, what exactly are you saying? Because at the end of the day, the fine that they have been charged, you will end up as a government incurring more than what they were supposed to have paid. And that stalemate was resolved by our Justice and Legal Affairs Committee during the visit to Kitui Prison, Mr. Speaker. And they were able to give a resolution of the House, and that matter was resolved. The only failure, which Senator Faki, you must bear responsibility as a senior legislator, as an advocate of the High Court, is that since then, as a Senate, we have not come and proposed any legislation to make sure that such cases that are now replicated across all our prisons are actually done away with. And that is part of the challenges that we are experiencing with in the country, and a demand for a better, more accountable government and institutions, Mr. Speaker, as that case was. When we went to Turkana, Mr. Speaker, just to quote one example, a final one, is that I know for a fact that our various committees visited many devolution-led programs that have been rolled out by the county government of Turkana in the last 10 years, Mr. Speaker. And they were able to appreciate and compare what is recorded in audit reports. I know for a fact that the CPIC committee chose not only to sit in the County Assembly of Turkana, but actually went on visiting many of the programs that were being found for one reason or the other to be not probably established or rolled out, Mr. Speaker. And they could see and take the auditors to task. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, I've always said that the structure with which we run our Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, leaves 90% or sometimes even 100% of the membership without a clear on-ground picture of the projects that are being discussed. If you are discussing the county government of Kericho, a particular road, perhaps it is only the senator of that particular county that knows that road or that tea-buying center or whatever project where auditors are flagged on issues of maladministration. The rest of the committee's members have no idea what has happened in that particular institution. And therefore, it is easy for either auditors or the county government to get away with issues that necessarily would have been flagged off, or people will have had better understanding had they gone, Mr. Speaker, and interacted with that particular forum easily. Therefore, there are a lot of successful stories to tell from Senate Mashinani. Mr. Speaker, I know we have our critics. I saw our media. Immediately we left Turkana. They went and interacted with a few people in Turkana town and said, oh, these people are here. They were driving in Prados. They never even opened the windows for us to meet them. You know, Mr. Speaker, if you choose to focus on what did not work, you will never lack something for Kenyans to complain about. It's Kenyan culture. But I am sure if that journalist who covered that story had been more diligent and went and interacted with the residents of the sites that our various committees visited while in Turkana, they would have found alternative feedback. But be that as it may, that is our country. That is the culture that we are used to, where when you portray leaders in bad light or when you complain and show how things have failed, things are not working, then you are recorded or you're considered to have been successful at exposing something. That level of pettiness can never take a country forward, Mr. Speaker. And I wish to challenge our journalists. I've quoted this example many times. That recently, for example, Mr. Speaker, before we went to Bunge Towers, there's a journalist who was accorded an exclusive view of the building. And they were taken through the committee rooms, the newly refurbished, complete with witness stands and new audiovisual equipment, and the kind of spaces that members will now be conducting business from, making it more visible. That now, even Mr. Speaker, and I don't know how far that process is, because of the audiovisual technology in those committee rooms, Mr. Speaker, members of the public can even follow committee rooms, committee meetings as they happen live and direct. And I wish that if the clerk of the Senate is watching and the administration, that program can actually be rolled out so that citizens appreciate better. Because especially committee sittings like Public Accounts Committee, because these are sittings that draw a lot of public attention when they are being considered. That's part and parcel of the installations that are in the new building. But the Kenya journalist, when he was allowed that opportunity, what did they go and focus on? They say these people have built a big kitchen, they have a gym on whatever floor. trying to reduce the entire structure. That is, of all the things that they saw, that is what captured, their attention. At some point, Mr. Speaker, we will also have to be serious with ourselves and say, how do we critique and become more reasonable, raise the standard of our argument, so that the standing of our leaders and the standing of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, is not just to be reduced about lagis. There are people who in this country, apart from knowing that there is tea and mandazi in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, there's nothing else that they will ever appreciate about this institution, because the people that are supposed to tell that story, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, either are unwilling or are not able to raise the level of their criticism and argument to the standard that is expected. And that is why Senate Mashinani provides an opportunity for members of the public, Mr. Speaker, to see, interact. When we visit sessions, like now when we'll be in Busia in September, Mr. Speaker, it will be open for members of the public. They'll come and watch our debates. They'll come and see. There are people who have never seen Dan Mahanzo. They will interact with him, question him. If there are things they don't appreciate about him, they will ask him. Mr. Speaker, that is what is expected to come out of this Senate Mashinani program, and why I am a firm believer, and I agree with the wisdom that went into the formation of this, Mr. Speaker. Even these things that you're talking about presently in the country, Mr. Speaker, this is one such opportunity. I hear, Mr. Speaker, that people are saying you don't want to provide an opportunity or a platform, that it is time for action. We don't want people to engage in conversations. But, Mr. Speaker, you know for a fact that even for that action to happen, people must sit down and agree on how that action is to be taken. We must have a conversation, for example. We will have concluded and said, okay, don't give me this or the other. We need to reduce the public wage bill. SRC must come and say how practical that is. And for that engagement to happen, Mr. Speaker, you must provide a forum. And that is what Senate Mashinani does, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we must resist this urge, Mr. Speaker, to try and box people sometimes and say that enough is enough. That there is no opportunity for you to say this or the other. A country that does not speak, a country that does not converse, Mr. Speaker, a society where people cannot disagree without being rude or, Mr. Speaker, violent with each other, is not a forward-looking society. In any society, Mr. Speaker, there will be people who hold different views on various matters. But at least speak, we must allow. We are a constitutional democracy, Mr. Speaker. Your view must not necessarily coincide with mine. There are views that I have that must not necessarily agree with Senator Eddie Okech. But I look forward to a point where I will not be able to tell him that I don't want to hear your view and I don't want to meet you. That just do what you know you need to do. I don't think that's a kind of country that you're looking forward to. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, Senate Mashinani is one such program. I know the people of Busia are waiting for us because there are things that they want to ask us as a Senate. All these questions that are being raised about the quality of our work, the legislative agenda that we do, that people are becoming more critical of our work. I see even senior lawyers struggle to understand what is the exact route that a bill takes from introduction up to assent. This Senate Mashinani provides such an opportunity where people will meet, they'll interact, and they'll be able to learn and know, Mr. Speaker, how this program is done. Therefore, or how legislative work open. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to being in Busia from the 23rd to the 27th of September and meeting the people of Busia, Mr. Speaker, interacting with them, getting to learn of devolution, its successes and failures in that particular county, and how we can entrench devolution on so many other aspects. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request the Senator for Makueni, Senator Danson Mahanzo, to second.
Senator Mahanzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, Senate Mashinani is one of our best practices whereby the Senate interacts with the different counties. I've only experienced the one in Lodwar, and I would like to state that while we were in Lodwar, the Committee of Agriculture visited Lake Turkana, which I don't think I would have visited for a long time unless Senate offered this opportunity. And we went there to address the issue of cooperatives, the issue of fishing, the senator for that county also guided us very well with a lot of things. And by the end of the day, with different committees, we had a good picture of what that particular county of Turkana needs to achieve full devolution and service to the people, Mr. Speaker. So I'm looking forward to Busia, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say that the Senator for Busia, he's not here today. I am aware he has some very serious engagements today, and I'm sure he would have welcomed us to Busia. Previously, he has welcomed committees there, especially the Committee of Agriculture, while we were dealing with the legislation in relation to cotton, Mr. Speaker, which is one of the big issues in Busia county right now. We also got an issue of fishing in Busia and the challenges fishermen go through. Some of them find themselves accused to be in the territory of Uganda, and we need way forward in all these matters so that we can resolve and solve the problems of the people. I believe the young people, the Gen Zs, will come along and will interact with the Senate. They have seen, we have supported a lot of their requests, and therefore we look forward into a session there whereby we will interact with the people. We want as many people as possible to understand what Senate does. That Senate stands for devolution, to make sure that the development is taken to the counties, is taken to mashinani, and that's why we have Senate mashinani. Again, we are able to interact with the community and resolve as many matters and as many questions and as many petitions which have originated from that region to the Senate, and it's usually an opportunity which is very refreshing to the people of a particular county and the people of Kenya. And we look forward to when Senate Mashinani will be held through all the counties in the country. It may take some years, but it is definitely one of the major situations and opportunities for the local people to interact with the Senate and all the local issues to be sorted out from that perspective. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second and thank the Leader of Majority for having moved this motion.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that aware that the Senate of Kenya is established under Article 93 of the Constitution, and its main role as set out at Article 96 is to represent, serve, and protect the interests of the counties and their governments. Further aware of the critical role that the Senate plays in the interlinkage between the national and county levels of government, and the need to enhance the interaction between the Senate and county governments as a means of bringing the Senate closer to the counties and the general public, acknowledging the successes made during the sittings of the Senate outside Nairobi, held in Uasin Gishu County, Kitui County, and Turkana County in September 2018, 2019, and 2023 respectively, further acknowledging the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee that a sitting of the Senate be held away from the traditional premises in Parliament buildings, Nairobi, during the term of the 13th Parliament, and the subsequent resolution of the Senate made on 8th of March 2023 to hold plenary and committee sittings in the counties for a one-week period within the month of September in every session of the 4th Senate, except during an election year, with the objective to, 1, promote the role and work of the Senate and enhance public awareness regarding the business of the Senate and Parliament in general. 2, highlight existing and new opportunities for engagement in the legislative processes. 3, develop and strengthen the partnership at the county level of government. And 4, provide an opportunity to members of staff of county assemblies to learn and share best practices with senators and parliamentary officers. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 126, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, the Senate resolves to hold its plenary and committee sittings in Busia County from 23rd to 27th of September 2024. Now, honorable members, I have members who have expressed desire to speak to this motion, and I'll give you opportunity to speak, and I'll call upon Senator Okech Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that there is no an important time to discuss the possibility of actually going to counties, mashinani, as is this time, Mr. Speaker. This motion comes in the backdrop of very many challenges in the country, Mr. Speaker. And you know, the purpose of devolution was to be able to devolve and resources as closest as possible to the people of Kenya. And we have got limitation with just the instrument of budget alone, whereby we have seen conversations around resources in this country. When we sometimes are limited by budget, counties cannot be able to get as much resources as they want in the grassroots communities, Mr. Speaker. But the demonstration of power as an element of service, Mr. Speaker, hasn't actually percolated among our people as compared to resources, Mr. Speaker. And one thing that this particular Senate brings, that sometimes we are not visible to rural communities, is the fact that the diversity that stitches this nation together, Mr. Speaker, does not manifest in the grassroots as it manifests here, Mr. Speaker. I remember very well when we went to Turkana, Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, the challenges that both the staffers of Senate as well as the members of this House experienced by just trying to navigate going to Turkana, Mr. Speaker. I remember some of the staffers of Parliament that were really, really committed, you know, took vehicles from here all the way to Eldoret, going all the way to Kainuk. And when conversations were being talked about the issue that was challenging in the North Rift with serious banditry and serious insecurity issues, sometimes most moved from this issue, they could not be able to connect with them. But when you came back and you were told about the ordeal that people experienced and the hardship that people are facing in those areas, Mr. Speaker, it makes the matters that this House can be able to address very close to the people who can be able to address them in terms of lawmakers, Mr. Speaker. During that time in Turkana, Mr. Speaker, I also remember very well that it was not just about sitting and being able to pass laws or conduct the ordinary and routine work of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, but we had very rigorous plans that could be able to expose the community of Turkana and the larger county of Turkana to the eyes, minds, and even the hearts of the senators who managed to go to Turkana, Mr. Speaker. And we were able to see firsthand the challenges that communities in Turkana are facing, Mr. Speaker. I personally had the privilege of going to Cathedral Education Scheme, Mr. Speaker, and I learned a lot about the challenges that the people of Turkana are facing, even at a time that the government had tried to avail things like cheap fertilizer, cheap seeds for people to be able to grow crops and be able to have a livelihood. Yet you could realize that because of poor infrastructure in those areas, Mr. Speaker, because of poor institutions that can be able to enable them receive these commodities in time, to be able to plant on time, Mr. Speaker, we saw how difficult it was just for them to be able to get it, such that some places still went without even crop growing, Mr. Speaker. When we went to the Cathedral Irrigation Scheme, Mr. Speaker, we also saw that because of ongoing conflict between communities there, Mr. Speaker, sometimes it was very hard for young people to be able to go to their chambers and be able to even cultivate and make a living out of this, Mr. Speaker. And when we came back here, these are some of the things that informed our thought of agency when we talk about issues that are affecting Turkana, Mr. Speaker. I remember very well, we also got to visit the oil fields in Turkana, Mr. Speaker, and you could be able to see the challenges that people are facing there, Mr. Speaker. And what I'm trying to say here is very simple, that sometimes the needs that are manifesting on the grassroots, Mr. Speaker, are so removed from us, yet we are drawn with a very wonderful diversity of individuals that sometimes the story that they're telling us here, when you meet the senator from Mandera, Senator Ali Roba, and he tells you about the story of women who still go miles to fetch water and the amazing work that people in Mandera are trying to do to be able to grow trees and to be able to, build water catchment areas so that they can have a greener land and a less drier land, Mr. Speaker. it becomes sometimes just stories, because that is the device that pulls us together. But then when you go to the ground and see both the struggle, and you also see the human spirit away from the struggle, and you see them trying to actually implement something, it brings the point home for the policies and laws that we are passing in this house, Mr. Speaker. As we are thinking about going to Busia, Mr. Speaker, for this year, I know for sure that Busia is one of the counties, Mr. Speaker, that was affected very seriously with floods in this country, Mr. Speaker. And sometimes when we see those headlines in TV, we see those headlines in different newspapers, it just becomes headline like that, because you read about it, you see news, and then the image is gone. But then the people in Busia are facing these challenges every single day of their life, Mr. Speaker. I had a chance as the disaster response committee of my party, ODM. I'm the chair there, Mr. Speaker, and I had a chance to go with our committee, who I thank very much, Mr. Speaker, to go to Busia in 2 occasions. One, we went to a place called Malaba Central, Mr. Speaker, to be able to look at the impact of floods in Busia, Mr. Speaker. And then afterwards, we went to Budalangi, Mr. Speaker. These are Kenyans that you'll find that they have even lost homes. They have lost livelihoods. They cannot be able to go to school, sometimes blocked in this menace of flood, Mr. Speaker. And the interventions that are supposed to be done through policy, through government actions, Mr. Speaker, sometimes lack in these spaces, because the only people who can be able to talk very strongly for them then become only their representatives. But that is not enough, Mr. Speaker. It goes without saying that when you go and visit Busia, and you have got a chance to visit some of these challenges that these communities face, Mr. Speaker, then you can be able to connect at a personal level, so that even when you come to pass policy in this house, or even when you come to champion for oversight role in the cabinet of this country, Mr. Speaker, then you speak to issues and problems that you have been able to see people facing clearly, and people facing in a way that becomes prohibitive to their modes of survival in those communities, Mr. Speaker. When I went in Busia, Mr. Speaker, I saw a line of trucks that were ranging for almost 15 kilometers, Mr. Speaker. When you leave Bungoma and heading to Malaba border, Mr. Speaker, you'll find a queue of trucks in that area, Mr. Speaker, that you then wonder the time that they take to be even get cleared there, the danger that imposes in the drivers who are there, as well as the community that is there, Mr. Speaker. You start thinking about what would be more adventurous policies that we as a nation can be able to think about simple issues of clearance and forwarding within our borders, Mr. Speaker. There are so many issues that I am excited that this particular Senate is going to learn from Busia when we go and be able to hold our sittings there and extend that sittings to visiting some of the crucial challenges, and not only challenges, also opportunities that people in Busia are facing. And this, Mr. Speaker, becomes the pretext of perhaps thinking about the next county that we'll go to, Mr. Speaker. I still pray, I'm not advocating, but I still pray that hopefully during my time here, Mr. Speaker, we will get a chance to perhaps do this particular Senate Mashinani, Mr. Speaker, in the subsequent years in Migori County, Mr. Speaker. It is a county of immense potential and amazing potential, Mr. Speaker. Also one of the counties within Nyanza region that is extremely cosmopolitan, Mr. Speaker. We have got the amazing culture of the people of Kuria, who are, industrious in their own way in the traditional agricultural space, Mr. Speaker. They work very hard, to be able to take care of their animals that inform the prime meat that the people of this country eat. Yet they have got challenges in Kuria that you cannot even imagine the slaughter, facilities to be able to, sell this prime meat to the country, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that the people of Kuria face a lot of challenges when they want to sell some of their best products to this country, such that people sometimes just take live animals to Nairobi through trucks that come to Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, which, if there was an improvement for them to be able to get some slaughter facilities in Kuria, they can be able to excel, Mr. Speaker. You know very well that right now there's this advocacy around the issue of healthy eating, Mr. Speaker. Instead of just eating, what we call French fries, you can also eat Kuria fries, because in Kuria is where you find that they are the sweetest potatoes in Migori County, Mr. Speaker. But yet, even as they try to grow this potato, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of limitations with what they can be able to do because there is no proper investment in the value chain. Migori County has figured out one of the facilities for improving potato in that area, but the capacity of it hasn't been tapped well to be able to help the people of Kuria, Mr. Speaker. And even within that mode of survival, Mr. Speaker, you still find that the people of Kuria and the people of Narok attend conflict, economic conflict because of border issues, because of a bit of cattle rustling that has been endemic in those areas, almost similar and akin to what we have seen in places like Turkana and the North Rift, Mr. Speaker. And when you come to Migori County, Mr. Speaker, one day you will see even the beauty, the Somali community that is doing a wonderful business, wonderful business intervention in Migori town as well as the border areas. We have got the Kikuyu communities in Migori, Mr. Speaker. We have got the Nubian community in Migori County. If you go all the way up to Miuru Bay, where we have got the Lua Basubas in that area, Mr. Speaker, coming all the way from Suna West and going to Nyatike constituency, where the people of Karungu are doing very well in terms of fishing industry, Mr. Speaker, but within their limitations, Mr. Speaker, you will see immense potential in these counties, Mr. Speaker. When you come all the way and come to a place called Uriri, together with Awendo, all the way to a place called Rongo constituency, Mr. Speaker, you will be wowed by the strength of sugarcane industry in that area, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes in all the tables in this country, Mr. Speaker, you'll find that there is some sugar that you always see called Sony sugar that comes from that region, Mr. Speaker. But we also have places like, Transmara, all the way if you go to our border with Homa Bay, you will find things like the Sukari industry, Mr. Speaker, wonderful industries, Mr. Speaker. All these just showing how much potential are within our counties, Mr. Speaker, yet the investment hasn't been done in a proper way that can be able to lift them, Mr. Speaker. And this is the house that when we talk about adding counties money, when we talk about intervening for counties and fighting for counties to get more resources to continue going to devolve system, Mr. Speaker, people in this house will connect with them. The honorable members will connect with these needs as much as possible when they get to interact with these particular opportunities and particular challenges in these communities as much as possible, Mr. Speaker. And I think that this house should be lauded by the people of Kenya for standing firm for the idea that the elected community must always be closest to the people. They must be close to the people not only by their words and rhetorics, Mr. Speaker, but also by experiencing what the people in the villages and in the communities are facing, Mr. Speaker. That's why I'm very proud today, Mr. Speaker, that the Senate of Kenya, when it was time that local communities have come in their frustrations of hard economic times, and especially epitomized by the younger generation called the Gen Z, who have faced a lot of economic challenges and have faced a lot of hardship, both that's affecting them and affecting their families, Mr. Speaker. When that time came that the leadership of this country could not be able to stand with them strong, and sometimes even more importantly, the leadership of Parliament got a little bit cagey and edgy, and were hiked to the extent backed away from the people, Mr. Speaker, the Senate stood tall. The Senate stood tall and gave the country direction, and the Senate stood tall and was able to at least initiate a conversation in the country, Mr. Speaker. And I'm seeing that leaders are already having that kind of tempo, even though the pulse of the nation is still a hungered nation and a hungry nation, where young people still they still want to punch harder so that their voices can be heard, where young people still feel that they need to punch harder so that change can happen in this country, where young people still feel like they need to do some more to see some equal reaction from government in terms of proper and sober actions that can be able to make their lives better, Mr. Speaker. At least people are talking. At least people are converging. At least people are starting to listen to one another. At least the powers that be are starting to listen to one another. And this is not happening just by chance, Mr. Speaker. It is happening because this house called Senate has been able to stand firm, has been able to bring about very hard conversations, conversations that are touching on ourselves, conversations that are touching on the mightiest powers of this country, Mr. Speaker, that for once, people can start listening to the downtrodden in this country, Mr. Speaker. And we are extending this through this kind of Senate machinani, where senators are not only going to be in their comfort in these wonderful seats in this house as they talk about issues that are affecting Kenyans, but they're going to the grassroots, not only to talk about those issues, not only to pass laws, but to see in almost anthropological way the way our people live their lives, the way these issues are affecting them, and also the way their aspirations can be able to inform the aspirations of this house in every single laws that we pass, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I'm very proud, Mr. Speaker, of this particular motion that have been pushed forward. I'm also very proud that it has become now a tradition of the Senate. Leave alone for the fact that we have got limited resources, Mr. Speaker. I am sure if the Senate had got adequate resources, Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that we could not only be doing one county in a year. Because if you're doing one county in a year, Mr. Speaker, it means that during our time in this house, we can only be able to do 5 counties, Mr. Speaker. But when I look at the hearts of these wonderful senators who are so committed to Kenyans in this house, Mr. Speaker, who sometimes sit until very late, people like Senator Faki of Mombasa, Senator of Vihiga, Senator Osotsi, you know, Senator of Kericho, Senator Arun Cheriot, you know, Senator of Elgeyo Marakwet, all the senators who are here are so dedicated to the issue of supporting our counties, Mr. Speaker. You can see through that dedication that their desire is that if we add enough resources, we could be able to even do at least 4 of the counties of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, at least in a year. So that with that, we can be able to have a holistic conversation within a particular Senate session, such as this being the 4th session, Mr. Speaker. If you can imagine if we had visited four counties in every year, Mr. Speaker, we would have a more representative conversation of what our people are facing, Mr. Speaker. And I want to urge the senators that even as we look forward to go to Busia, let them also be able to actually inform our strategy in dealing with the issues of budget, the issues of, Kara, the issues of Dora when we come here. Let it not just be that when we come, then we forget some of these overarching challenges. Some of them might not be within our powers and within our borders as a Senate, but at least this platform can be able to help us highlight some of them to key policymakers, Mr. Speaker, that some of those challenges can find their ways, either through wisdom or just through of this esteemed parliament. They can find their ways in relevant ministerial, departmental, and government agencies, Mr. Speaker, that can be able to deal with them. One of those, Mr. Speaker, for example, in Nyatike, where I come from, Mr. Speaker, I have experienced over 6 years, Mr. Speaker, of wonderful people of Nyatike who are trying to grow rice, Mr. Speaker. Some of the best rice grains that you can think about in this country are in the lower Kuja irrigation scheme, Mr. Speaker. But the people in Nyatike, when they gave their land so that that scheme could get a footing and start as a serious project that could be able to increase production of rice and be able to increase, the contribution of our region in the food basket of the country, Mr. Speaker. Some of the community members lost their land in a scheme that the government was supposed to pay them, but they were never paid, they were never compensated. Yet, rice grains in terms of paddy still leave Nyatike going as far as the borders of Uganda, as far as Mwea Tebera, Mr. Speaker, and these communities have not been compensated, Mr. Speaker. It is hard sometimes when I raise those issues in this house, and sometimes senators don't have a visibility on these cases, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to urge us that when we go, let it be that when we pick some of these issues, we can be able to bring them in the floor of the Senate.
Your time is up, Senator Eddie. Senator Mohamed Faki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kwanza ningependa kusema kwa ilikuwa si nidhamu kwa Senator wa Migori kujaribu kukata laini wakati sisi tuko hapa tunasubiri kama maseneta ambao tumemtangulia katika bunge hili. Pili, Mheshimiwa Speaker, ningependa kuunga mkono hoja ya kupeleka vikao vya Senate katika kaunti ya Busia. Mheshimiwa Speaker, nilikuwako katika vikao vya kwanza vya Uasin Gishu yani Eldoret, tukaenda kule Machakos, zamani Kitui, na majuzi tulikwenda Turkana. Mheshimiwa Speaker, vikao hivi vinapeleka bunge kwa watu, Mheshimiwa Speaker. Na ukiangalia Mheshimiwa Speaker, sehemu nyingi serikali ni gavana labda na county commissioner. Lakini tunapozuru maeneo haya na kuweka vikao, Mheshimiwa Speaker, inaelezwa taswira kwamba serikali sio gavana na county commissioner peke yake. Serikali ina vitengo vingi ambavyo vinapaswa kupeleka huduma mashinani kama hivyo. Kama alivyotangulia kusema Senator Cheriot, kiongozi wa wengi, ni kwamba tulipokwenda Kitui wakati huo tulikuwa tuko katika kamati ya sheria ikiongozwa na Senator Cherargei, na tuliweza kuzuru gereza la Kitui, Mheshimiwa Speaker, na pale tukapata wananchi wengi wamewekwa rumande kwa makosa madogo madogo ambao wengine walikuwa wanahitajia shilingi 3,000 pekee ili waweze kupata bond waweze kwenda nyumbani wakati wanasubiri kesi. Mheshimiwa Speaker, kama sisi kama maseneta ambao tulikuwa pale tuliweza kuchanga na tuliweza kutoa nje karibu watu 100 kwa siku hiyo. Baada ya ziara yetu, Mheshimiwa Speaker, jaji ambaye alikuwa anahudumu katika kaunti ya Kitui alikuwa ni Mheshimiwa Jaji nimesahau jina lake, lakini jaji ambaye alikuwa amehudumu Mombasa pia aliweza kuitisha faili zote za wale watu ambao walikuwa kwa jela, na baadaye karibu wafungwa wengine 100 waliweza kutoka jela baada ya hukumu zao kuondolewa na jaji huyo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, vikao hivi vina athari nyingi. Kwanza kabisa inajaribu kuwawezesha maseneta kuweza kuzuru kaunti ambazo sio zao, kuona vile ambavyo ugatuzi unafanya kazi ama haufanyi kazi. Kwa sababu tunapozuru, Mheshimiwa Speaker, kila mtu anapata fursa kuangalia mradi mmoja au mwingine wa ile kaunti ambayo tumezuru. Kwa mfano tulipokuwa Turkana, baadhi yetu tulizuru baadhi ya miradi na wengine walizuru miradi mingine ambayo ilikuwa imesemekana imefanyika lakini ikawa ni miradi gushi. Kwa Mheshimiwa Speaker, vikao hivi katika mashinani vinasaidia pakubwa kuweza kuiwezesha Senate kuweza kuangalia kama kweli zile pesa ambazo zinatumwa katika kaunti zetu zinaweza kufanya kazi. Mheshimiwa Speaker, pendekezo langu lilikuwa ni kwamba badala ya kuzuru kaunti moja, Mheshimiwa Speaker, bunge la Senate ligawanyike kama ni kamati 10 za watu 6 ambazo zitazuru kaunti 6 tofauti wakati wa hiyo wiki moja ya Senate mashinani. Lakini pendekezo hilo langu, Mheshimiwa Speaker, lilikataliwa katika kamati ya SBC. Lakini hata hivyo, Mheshimiwa Speaker, tutakapozuru Busia itakuwa bora kwa wale ambao watakuwa hawakuhusishwa katika komiti zao, Mheshimiwa Speaker, waweze kuchukua fursa kuangalia ni miradi gani ambayo inafanyika, ili ile miradi yote ambayo imeorodheshwa kwa mfano wa mwaka wa 2023 24 tuweze kuiangalia, je, ilifanyika ama haikufanyika. Kwa sababu mara nyingi pesa zinatolewa kwamba zinafanya mradi fulani, lakini ukifika mashinani mradi hakuna na pesa tayari zimetumika. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, hii inatupatia fursa sisi maseneta kuweza kutathmini ile miradi ambayo inafanyika katika kaunti zetu. Vile vile inatupa fursa ya kusoma yale mambo ambayo yanafanyika katika kaunti zingine mbali na zetu, na vile vile pia inawapa wananchi kuweza kusoma majukumu ya seneti na vile vile hizo kazi ambazo zinafanywa na seneti. Kwa hiyo mengi machache, Mheshimiwa Speaker, nashukuru kwa kunipa fursa hiyo.
Senator Osotsi Godfrey Atieno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also comment on this motion, which is proposing that Senate Mashinani for this year be taken to Busia County. Mr. Speaker, I think the is coming up with this concept of Senate machinani, which basically means taking the Senate to the people. I think this is a very, very, very commendable initiative, and Senate has demonstrated its maturity by having this program where we can interact with the people on the ground and be able to resolve the problem. This particular Senate machinani is happening on 23rd to 27th of September this year. And I would like us to learn from the past